Hello, my name is John de Lacy. I am the second Earl of Lincoln. I am the Baron of Holton, the Lord of Bowland, the Master of Pontefract Castle, the Constable of Chester, and a Virgo. And I am here to talk to you today about something I wish to complain of. Welcome to the world of histrionics, incredible tales from before the now. As I am before the now, and I've been asked by Histrionic Studios here to come and talk to you, I thought I'd take in what the future has to offer. Oh yes, I tried some of that pulled pork and salted caramel ice cream you like so much, and I had a bit of a sit down on a big sofa with a nice lovely latte and watched a few box sets. And while I was on there streaming, I saw a programme with a man dressed as a knight, and he had a hood like this thrown back from his head, like it was a hoodie, like it was made of cloth. This is an armoured coif. It's made of metal. You don't just throw it back like a hoodie. It doesn't work like that. It's supposed to be snug around your face. If it wasn't and you let it flap about all over the place, it would hit you in the eyes when you were riding a horse. Even worse, having armour that doesn't actually stick to your face in a snug type way is a little bit like trying to protect yourself from a sword by holding a frying pan near your head. As soon as that sword would be swung with any force, the frying pan, bash, would hit you in the face, thus rendering the armour pointless. Wearing this, it's supposed to be tight. It's supposed to be tight-fitting. It's how it works. And while I'm here, by the way, it's not known as chain mail. No, this hood or coif is known as mail. That's the rings, all of these interlinking rings made of hard iron or steel to you. Yes, it's called mail. That's because the word mail actually is very similar to the word chain. It comes from the Old French, which comes from Latin, which refers to the appearance of the chain. So if you say chain mail, you're actually saying chain chain and running into real danger of accidentally singing an Aretha Franklin song. You see, hoods, coifs don't come off like that. They come off like this. Which is why you have to keep your hair short. If my hair was long, when I tried to take off the coif, it would rip out my hair. That's not what happened on the top, by the way. That is the ravages of time. Now, I'm not just complaining about coifs. I'm not just complaining about chain mail as a term. I'm complaining about all things that seem to say one thing and then be another in actual practice. And I know a lot of leaders like that. I bet you do too. That say one thing and then when you examine exactly what it is that they're doing, it's completely different. I can think of one leader in particular that did that. That's right. King John. Oh, yes. Oh, he talked a good talk. Oh, yes. Talked about how great he was as a king, a great warrior, just like his brother who died before him, King Richard. But it was total nonsense. Utter nonsense. He was mean and spiteful and greedy, and he would throw tantrums like a tiny child. The first time I saw him at court, he was thrashing around like a toddler, waving his arms and legs, having a proper little strop on the ground. He was even chewing the rugs and the floor rushes. He was so upset. I don't remember what about because I was concerned with other things. You see, I have to say, I'm not very impressed with this particular line of kings. No, I'm not. King Richard, yes, he was very brave and strong and fearless. And on crusades and in Germany and France, he would charge into battle completely fearlessly and inspire confidence in the men in the way that King John does not. But still, King Richard occasionally could be mean and suddenly angry and throw the odd tantrum or two. Do you know, he charged my father 3,000 marks just so my father could live in his own home. Pontefract Castle. Can you believe that? It belonged to him and he got charged money. And then King John charged me 7,000 marks, payable over 3 years, just to inherit Pontefract Castle as my home. He had his men garrisoned in Pontefract Castle, and I had to pay for them. Can you believe that? They're eating my food, wearing my clothes, relieving themselves in my gardens. That's not good for the marigolds, I can tell you. No, some bemoaned the day that poor King Richard had passed. And how did he die? How did this man die? This great hero, king of the English, this man who spoke very little English, who was king for 10 years and spent a sum total of 6 months inside of England, who once said he would sell London if he could get a good price for it, and spent most of the time fighting his own relatives and people he didn't like or had fallen out with him, which is most of his friends, in Europe. How did he die? Was it in glorious battle? No, it was not. He was walking around a castle, didn't think he had to put his armour on because it was too hot, and a child shot him in the neck with the crossbow bolt. Unbelievable. So now King John's in charge. Oh, he'd like to be like his brother. Oh, he makes a good speech. Oh, yes, chatting away to the barons, the lords who supply him with his knights and his men-at-arms and his armies and his money. And what does he do? At the first sign of trouble, he runs away. He flees. At the first sign that anything gets difficult, he runs away to somewhere cold and freezing. I'm talking, of course, of England. He runs away from the warm European continent and hides in England. Oh, he's very good at being cruel to prisoners. Oh, yes, he's very good at torturing them and being horrible to them, but fighting, actually setting an example, doing anything in front of people so they can see how courageous he is? No! Nothing of the sort is done. And what happens? We don't get the money, we don't get the men, we don't get what we need for the war, we're left fighting on our own and lose most of the land that was kept by his family, most of his ancestral lands in what is now called France, lost by King John. King John Soft Sword. King John Lack Land. So we come back, and there are more taxes, and more complaints, and more cruelty, and more unfairness. King John seems to think he can do whatever he wants to anyone he likes, simply because he's in charge. Well, the barons will not stand for that. At the start of the year of our Lord 1215, rebellion rose against the king. Barons fighting against barons. The king's forces fighting each other. I joined the rebel side, obviously, and we didn't do so well to start with. We lost a couple of the first battles. But then, Robert Fitzwalter, Templar Knight, and organiser pretty much of the entire rebellion, is named as the marshal and the leader of the army of God and heaven, and rampages into London virtually unopposed. On the 17th of May 1215, there is a massive victory, which forces King John to finally come to terms. He comes to a small field in a place called Runnymede and signs the Magna Carta. Now, the Magna Carta, we called it the Great Charter of Liberties. And while I'm here, I should point out, he didn't actually sign it physically. He didn't have a pen. He put his seal to it. And before anyone goes crazy with their imaginations, a seal is a kind of royal stamp that you put on the paper. It's not a seal. It wasn't a massive seal. All right, he didn't reach into a bag, the king, and lift a huge seal out of it, and then wipe it all over the Magna Carta, trying to keep it still. If there is one thing you take away from today in this video, don't let it be the memory that King John wiped a massive seal all over the Magna Carta. He put his stamp, his royal seal, onto it. Problem though, Magna Carta actually hadn't been fully written yet. King John just put his seal on virtually a blank piece of paper with the 25 barons, myself included, listed on there. We didn't actually put all of the rules together until much later. Yeah? And what did King John do then? Did he fully obey? Oh yes, I completely will. Did I fully obey the Magna Carta terms? Will I now respect this rule of law, these civil rights and liberties are put down here? Will I do that? Will I? No, I won't. No, he didn't. I wasn't there, but he probably had another one of his tantrums and refused to obey. Not only that, but the Pope threatened to excommunicate anybody who went along with the Magna Carta. What does excommunicate mean? It does not mean they cancel your mobile contract. No. Excommunicate means you get thrown out of the church. Very important in 1215, as it would kind of mean that we wouldn't go to heaven. People were genuinely terrified by this, of course. And many people who had fought against King John then switched sides to fight with him as he reignited the war against the barons. Oh, what to do? This is awful. It's not just that bad, but there are great knights of tremendous fame who have now joined the king's side. William Marshall, said by the Archbishop of Canterbury to be the greatest knight who ever lived, is fighting for the crown. Not because I know he doesn't like King John, no. Not because they're friends, but because he thinks the crown is more important than the person who wears it. So what do we do? Well, Fitzwalter, you remember the Templar I spoke about a minute ago, he has a genius idea, by which I mean a terrible idea. Yet again, seeming like he knows what he's doing, and then nonsense occurs. He goes to France and asks the French king to intervene, to pay, and to lend soldiers, and then promises him that he could be the King of England as well if he wins. Genius! What am I going to do now? I don't want King John to be king, but similarly I do not want the King of France to be the King of England either. Now, many who were fighting against King John before have to get down on our knees and swear allegiance to him and promise to be good, oh yes, and not disobey him like we did before, fingers crossed, oh yeah, absolutely, totally be your friend now. It's embarrassing at best, and shameful at worst. He promises to treat us well, of course, the king, but he doesn't. He promises to fight fairly, but he doesn't. He is cruel and doesn't get involved when he needs to, and the war goes on and on. And what happens in the end? How does this war end? Does King John die? Yes, he does. Does he die in an enormous sword fight, or the point of a spear? Does he die in a great and tremendous act of heroism, or crossbow-related stupidity like his brother? No. He dies by pooing himself to death. That's right. He pooed. He pooed himself to death. He ate far too much and far too well. He spoiled himself and ate peaches in honey, a huge bowl of them, and was so ill he pooed himself to death. The war lingered on and limped on for a little bit longer, but not very much. And in the end, we decided, after the Battle of Lincoln in 1217, to all swear our allegiance to the new king, Henry. What a mess. How embarrassing. The king who we were fighting against died because of poo. His brother, who had given King John the throne in the first place, died because he was shot in the neck by a child. And we caused chaos in the war by attempting to join with France in the first place. And then it's just embarrassing as much as anything. All those people dead. Hundreds, if not thousands dead in the war just because of someone who would repeatedly throw a tantrum and not do what he said he was going to. Still, out of it, we have the Magna Carta, the great Charter of Liberties, which, around the mid-1220s, was ratified again. I was there as a witness. And at last, we could have civil rights. At last, we could have human rights. People would be treated fairly. People who were in charge could not do just what they wanted because they were in charge. There was not one rule for them and one rule for everybody else. Everybody's treated equally. The punishment fits the crime. You cannot take personal vengeance because of the law. To quote the Magna Carta itself, to no one will we deny or delay or sell rights or justice. You can't simply do what you want because you're at the top, and if you say you're going to do something, then you have to do it. Words and deeds as one. Let's hope it stays that way. Thank you very much for listening to me today. My name has been John DeLacy, and I'm sure it will continue to be long after this. If you have enjoyed this video, make sure to click like, subscribe, and share, and to maybe research Magna Carta and the First Baron's War on your own at home. Although if you're not old enough to use the internet, make sure you have a grown-up with you, and make sure to check out other histrionics videos as well here on their YouTube site. My name has been John DeLacy. Thank you very much for listening. Stay safe.